Out of Heroes Hearth, this is Kyle Fergusson. Today I get to sit down with Diamond Hands CaesarSalad on Anub'arak. This is Game 3 versus Storm Esports from this past weekend. Be sure to check out the full VOD because it is an awesome series. This is but one of the many games played. CaesarSalad, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Kyle. Great to be here.
Let's just dive right into what I saw there at the start. Were you pinging the middle of the map for a reason? Is there already a plan in place?
Yeah. I mean, I like to think that I'm looking around pretty intensely as tank, as I think the main role is control vision.
Okay.
And yeah, I was just kind of going to the bush that I wanted to hold.
How does Anub'arak play into that with beetles and his whole kit? Like, doesn't he give away his position often with those beetles? You gotta stay mounted. There's like a whole extra strategy.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's not too complicated. It's just every time you cast a spell, a beetle spawns. So as long as you're aware of that, then you can be fine, I guess.
Oh yeah, I guess that's tied to Legion of Beetles, and then you'd have to be scared about being dismounted. And it can be toggled on and off. Well, let's talk about the draft a little bit here, because Anub'arak is one of our old extreme draft dependent tanks. We're talking what, like 2017, when they went crazy with the spell armors and the physical armors. He's kept some of that. So in this particular game, it was 5th pick, or after we got to see 2 on the enemy side, which was Falstad and Blaze. Were you already planning the Anub'arak, or was that a reaction to Falstad Blaze?
No, definitely not a reaction. And yeah, like you said, he definitely used to be like your premier anti-mage hero, and I still think that's his main purpose, but he's a lot more versatile in general now. I think he's just a tank you can kind of pick whenever.
He's got that hardened carapace, which gives you 40 spell armor over 3 seconds. They end up getting a Sylvanas. Sylvanas ended up going with that Might of the Banshee Queen, which doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be like a spell damage build. Does Anub'arak have an advantage here because they went Falstad Sylvanas, or are they so hybrid it doesn't really matter?
I would say he does have a slight advantage versus those heroes compared to like a Grey main, who's going to be like pure auto attack. Which is also why, like, I mean, we'll talk about it later when we go to the talents, but I opted into the 60 spell armor level 1 because of the fact that their 2 range DPS are heavy on the spell damage. But yeah, that was definitely a good pickup by you. I noticed that too in the game, that he went the spell power 1 on Sylv.
In that particular bottom fight, how do you know who to dive? So in like a Anub'arak Uther kind of scenario, things make a lot more sense to me. Anub'arak stuns, then someone else follows up. Here, there's Lucio getting crazy out there. He's gonna boot people around and react to you, but you don't have that pure CC follow-up. So what is the plan, and how do you know what to pick on the enemy side?
Yeah, it's really hard to explain in words, actually, because I mean, the number one thing that I'm thinking about when I just play the game in general is how can I create winning trades for my team. And with that information, I just kind of have to decide, can I engage on this hero without taking too much damage? And does my engage on this hero help my team create damage on that hero? So it's just this weird balance. Very hard to put in words, but that's what I'm thinking, actually.
So kind of like a Hearthstone Magic the Gathering sort of situation. Can I trade my 2 abilities for more value than the enemy gets out of me diving into them?
Yeah, and even though this isn't a turn-based game, that's essentially, I guess, how this game works to succeed in really every game.
So right now, Lucio's forward, but it's Lucio. Valamar's getting crazy. Are you doing any sort of tanking protection right now, or is it pure hunting?
Right now, we're just kind of hunting. I mean, early game, we're just looking for wave priority and controlling rotations. And that's just kind of what I'm thinking right now, but the game hasn't developed too much, I guess, so it's still kind of just basic movement.
Would you recommend kind of the setup you have? You've got, so we know it's the lack of CC, but Anub'arak brings a lot of it, but you've got a Urel as well, who you do not have to take care of at all. You've got the squishy backline and Valimar running around. Is this the sort of comp Anub'arak should be plugged into normally, or would is there a beginner version of the comp you would suggest?
Yeah, so I think Anub'arak can plug into any comp really well, but I would say he's one of the more slippery tanks, and you can kind of see that in his character design. Like his hit point pool isn't as heavy as like a Diablo or Muradin, but he makes up for it with higher mobility and like a shield. So essentially everyone on our team is very slippery. We're playing a very like finesse comp. So we all kind of jive together really well here.
Also, I'm noting how much is this more of a player choice? You're really into the orbs, and I like it. I like you grabbing all those orbs for your team. Do you do that on every tank, or is Anub'arak special?
I try on every tank, but Anub'arak is a little special because the way his shield works, you can kind of, you know, borrow HP to be in the fray to grab the orb and not get punished for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's one of the most underrated aspects of the game, like getting the orb. It heals everyone 12%, like if you didn't know that, so it's really strong.
Well, here we have a cocoon being fired. In this situation, there's a great like CC pile that just barely misses, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we're level 10 and I recognize we have a small window to capitalize on it, so as a tank I'm always trying to like capitalize on those small windows. We don't get the kill, but the risk versus reward factor is like very high for us, like, or if it's very low risk, high reward, forget that kill.
Easier almost to avoid the enemy team but take advantage of your 20 extra seconds you have.
Exactly.
Cool. That's great to know, and that's something that I feel can, particularly in more of like the CC sort of heroics, they can just go held onto for so long because you want it to have such high value. But it's nice to see just you rip it out there, see if something can happen.
Exactly. Like you can see right now, my cocoon's only 13 seconds more, and you know, we haven't been punished for not having it. So,
would you ever go Locust Swarm?
Every time that I've theorized that it's good, I usually just regret not having the cocoon.
Is it a damage issue, a regen issue? Like, what would make it good?
You know what? It's not a terrible ult. It's just the opportunity cost. It's the fact that you don't have cocoon, which is like one of the strongest ults in the game.
I gotcha. Well, let's start talking about these talents a little bit. You mentioned the Nerubian armor there, giving you the extra 20 spell armor, as you notice the enemy side full of spells. Regen Master. Any particular matchups you would do that in? Yeah.
If I'm going heavy into AA heroes, I think finishing that quest and having the extra 500 hit points is really valuable. So Anub'arak's a lot of talent diversity. I think all of his level 1 talents are viable. And yeah, I would go Globes in certain situations.
Would you say that once you've kind of picked your level 1 talent, though, you've dedicated to matching the pictures, or is there talent diversity in your choices per level?
Choices per level too. So this is actually, so I went matching the pictures this game, but it's probably one of my less common Anub'arak builds. I just did it this game because of the fact of, like you mentioned earlier, the 2 spell power range that they have.
Yeah, and that doesn't necessarily play into the Shed Exoskeleton, though I am interested to talk to you about that. It's the Chitinous Plating. When Hardened Carapace is active, take damage from abilities reduces cooldown by 1 second up to 3 seconds. So all these little pings from things like Lightning Rod or Sylvanas, Shadow, Withering Fire ends up getting that cooldown reduction for you. But let's go back to level 4 here. So we got you got some movement speed, making you more slippery. Underking, Bed of Barbs, all seem like really good choices.
Yeah, so Bed of Barbs is really good on maps with tight chokes, which you could argue every map has, but when I say that, I'm thinking of maps like BOE, Cursed Hollow, but on a kind of more open map like this, I like the movement speed at 4, just to add to the slippery factor.
And Underking is probably one of the most common picks in the lower leagues. Do you think it has value?
It does for blowing up like a single backliner. I think if you're going like a dive comp, it's okay. But the way we're kind of slippery here, I really need to hold onto my E a lot for mobility. So I'm not going to be looking to just one-shot a backliner very often here.
That makes sense. So you would almost want Underking to catch up to a Storm League Genji who's making their own plays.
Exactly, yeah. It's like if the play is like we're diving mouth, you know, and then we just need as much damage as we can in range, then it has a use case there.
Going back to level 7, Subterranean Shield is certainly the popular one. Do you grab this as well? What's the value of this shield compared to W?
That shield is better for short fights. And then the W talents can be better if like the fights are longer and you're just taking a lot of like random spell poke. But Subterranean Shield actually is my more commonly picked level 7 for sure.
Okay. Leeching Scarabs. How... It's...
I think it's really bad.
Yeah.
I see a lot of players pick it, but it's not good in my opinion. The beetles die too quickly in team fights. And they just don't get value, but that's just my 2 cents. I know a lot of other tanks would disagree with me.
Is there a world... It's hard to imagine a team fight where things aren't randomly exploding in Heroes of the Storm. You know, you got multi-shots from Vala, you got Raynor doing penetrating round. Like, is there a team comp where the beetles would actually survive and get all that value?
More so against like heavy AA heroes, I guess. Like Greymane or something. I don't know. But yeah, there's just so much random damage. It's really hard to keep the beetles alive.
Let's rejoin the game for a hot moment there. You cocooned Blaze, which is a very interesting choice. It allowed you to isolate Muradin, is my guess.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Lauber got a little too excited, which was kind of the theme of this game. And I recognized that his closest save was going to be a bunker from Blaze, so remove that threat, secure the isolation kill.
You've got to be constantly changing your cocoon target. How do you best deduce who to cocoon? Is it just experience, or are you using something like the tab screen to look at damage or survivability?
A lot of it's just experience, but a lot of it's also running through these hypothetical scenarios in my head, like that one where it's like, okay, if tank dives, who can save him? Sometimes it's falset, like I need a falset or web the falset so he can't gust us away. But in that situation, it was Blaze that was the closest save. And it's just kind of keeping a mental tab of all the enemy team resources and understanding, you know, what's close to, I guess, whoever we're trying to kill.
Yeah. That's a lot, because then you've got things like Dwarf Launch that come in and change the cooldown on the ability. So you're just constantly adjusting how you're thinking about the team.
Yeah. Like, right there, even, I had to make it a game time decision to web the Blaze. I don't even know if it was the best one, but I just thought that his CC was coming. And as long as I get him out of the fight, if I dodge the Muradin CC, then I'll live.
You grabbed Burning Beetles, though, with no beetle talents. So how do... Perhaps this is a greater tank philosophy question, but how should we treat all these sort of burning rages, and are they good?
I'm glad you brought that up, because it's actually a misclick.
Oh, okay.
But I typically do go Burning Rage. It's just that this game, because I had all the W talents, I should have gone the W13 too.
Okay,
but,
the Urticating Spines for kind of that AoE damage around yourself, getting the resets.
Yeah, like it does a surprising amount of bursts in these team fights if you properly manage it. But to answer your original question, I would say Muradin's Burning Rage is really good, Anub'arak's Burning Rage is really good, Johanna's Burning Rage is really bad.
Okay. That's
like my initial thoughts. Some are good, some are bad. It just depends.
So it's not even really like I'm living on the enemy team, I'm gonna do so much damage sort of thing. It's individual talents are either good or bad and deal enough damage to make them worth it.
Yeah, well, actually on that note, I mean, Muradin kind of does what you described, living in the enemy team, which is why his Burning Rage is good.
Okay.
Because it's unique in the fact that it actually heals him. Other people's don't. So yeah, that would be like the pro of Muradin's.
Yeah, despite the sort of reputation for living, Johanna doesn't exactly go into the enemy team and want to stay there.
Yeah, she just doesn't have the mobility to kind of hang out for too long.
That makes perfect sense. Acid Dripped Mandibles, though, you've got, you bring a lot of stuns to yourself. Is this a pickup you'd do?
I never picked that talent. I think in higher level games, you can't really freely auto attack. A lot of my, I guess, micro decisions in team fights is actually like kind of just looking for blocks and stuff, like stutter stepping, like right here. Actually,
yeah, good example.
I just stay glued to the blaze, and then by following his movement, I don't think I'm doing a lot with my auto attacks, but more so just my positioning.
Makes perfect sense. So the Urticating Spines deals damage, double damage to heroes. Do you ever... I know the chitinous plating has a limit of up to 3 seconds, so that would get you down to 4 seconds. That's not insane, but do you ever say, hey, look at that Tassadar storm, look at that blaze fire, I'm gonna go stand in it for a bit and get some sweet resets?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's like a thing I was thinking about a lot this game. Every time I run up to Syl, if I see her hit her Q button, I'm popping a W and getting a free 3-second CDR. So, absolutely.
Level 16 Epicenter. What? This is definitely the go-to. Area, cooldown per hero hit, so just more dive, more everything you want out of Anub'arak in the first place.
Yeah, the radius increase on it, it's definitely the strongest part of that talent. Landing your burrow charge itself can be difficult at times, but once you get 16, it becomes really easy. And the easier it is for you to land your burrow charge, the easier it is to follow up on yourself with the, what's the Q called? The Impale. So, I would say that's the main value of it, the radius increase.
Now, this is a great bit of domination of the map as you guys start using your teleports and mobility to go over walls and just make the map yours. Is this something that you've kind of pre-planned with this team in Li Ming, or does this make them more viable heroes on Towers of Doom?
We didn't plan it, but just shout out to my team here. There's a lot of good synergy. Every time we decided, we got to defend this other keep, I was calling like, I'm going over, and then my teammates would be like, yeah, we're going with you. And even right here, we know they're in a desperate place, so we just make the call that we have to... I knew Falside was flying in, and we just kind of covered every bush to make sure that we can find him.
You said something really important there with the burrow charge hitting, allowing you to then line up and impale. So is there another 16 choice then when this kind of completes your kit in that way?
No, the other 16s are... I mean, I think the spell power reduction is really strong, but the issue just becomes it's not reliable to hit.
Yeah, why would... So you have to now hit the thing that's harder to do in the first place, so you're not going to get the value out of it. And then Beetlejuiced does not seem great.
You know what? Earlier you brought up, how can we keep the beetles alive? And I guess you would argue that 16 you can do that because it does increase the HP by 30%. So if you're really into the beetles, then I guess you go Beetlejuiced.
If you're dedicated, Rewind at level 20 has been the tradition for so long. It's so much power for Anub'arak. It's more beetles too, if that's what you're up to. Any other choices at 20 that you'd go for?
Yeah, you know what? I used to be the Trader King purist. I used to go that all the time just because it kind of fit my playstyle with just creating as much space as possible and drawing the enemy team's attention and forcing them into a situation where they try to all-in me and I could just pop it and waste all their spells into 75 armor. But Rewind just is a little bit more of a playmaker, but I would totally say they're both viable. I wouldn't say one's better than the other. They're just apples and oranges.
Oh, interesting. Activate to gain 75 armor. So just pure armor then. Not spell armor. Huh.
Yeah, it's really strong. And it has the base effect of the 10% bonus HP and 20 spell armor. So he technically has the best Hardened Shield type talent in the game, I think.
Cryptweave not viable? I know, what was it, 6 months ago or so, they added this damage aspect to it.
Yeah, you know what? I picked it in a Storm League game once, and it was like a rare scenario that just like level 20, it's actually the correct talent, but I can't even remember why. There's some corner cases on that one.
Perhaps a very, very isolated dive and taking care of that all on your own. Well, this was some great information about general tanking. For people who are excited to get into Anub'arak, want to pick it up for their own roster, where would you suggest they start? What sort of training wheels should they have when thinking about Anub'arak?
Number one tip when it comes to Anub'arak is, in general, if you E deep, or I guess I use the ability name, if you burrow charge deep into the enemy team, you're probably going to die. So what I like to do is fish with my impale, and if the impale hits someone in the back line, then you kind of use that as your cue to follow up on yourself.
That's good advice.
Number one tip I have.
I like that a lot. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this. Everyone watching at home, be sure to like, subscribe, ring that bell for more Learn to Play Heroes of the Storm content, as well as the ongoing CCL. We'll see you soon with more Learn to Play content.